sorry, I got a thing saying about the forces that govern this thing called food, yeah? And so while the chapters are organized chronologically, because it's a history and you want to do things chronologically, there are some themes that I pursue that are about the way I perceive inequities in Australian society. The first one is not so much that, it's about land and what we do with it. And that was basically because I was writing the book during the drought of 2018, 2019, and also big fish kill and so on, and climate change. So I started to get involved with what land enables you to do around food.
The first chapter is land focused,
and
is
land
the
focused.
climate that it was written in the time.
Yeah. And I gotta say, I didn't choose the title True to the Land. My reaction publisher did, and I just thought, wow, this guy got the book instantly.
That's great. Right? That's really good.
And the other themes I've certainly have a theme running through it about First Nations and food sovereignty and different aspects of what actually happened to First Nations and food. And then obviously being a migrant to the country, I investigated the politics around
just in case anyone doesn't know where you're
from Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka represent.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka, thank you. And Dad's wearing a Sri Lankan shirt
shirt
tonight.
Yeah.
Got a bit of Sri Lankan pride.
And so it was about trying to not expose, but explore how the politics of migration impacted on our foodways as well. Because I think it's too easy to say, oh, fabulous, Australia's a multicultural country, we've got a really good multicultural table, which obscures how that happened.
Yeah.
And the last big theme through it is about the place of women in creating food in Australia. Because I think at the moment, there's a very heavy domination of a male perspective on the great moments of Australian food.
Yeah.
And I think that's bullshit from a large part of Australian history. So they are the kind of organizing principles in each of the chapters, plus the kind of chronology.
I really, really love that. And I think it's really kind of genuine to the way that you think that. I think it's a real representation of that and a credit to you as well.
Yeah.
Question 2. Are you ready?
I'm ready. This is like Mastermind. Oh my God. Jennifer Byrne. Ooh.
It doesn't mean I'm Jennifer Byrne?
No.
So obviously, you were saying you were publishing it, you were starting to write it. Was it 2018 you started?
2018, I started the research on it, yeah.
How many cars did you total in writing this book?
How many?
Cars.
Oh, Mary, did I total? 3. Thank you. No, 2. Thank you. I did wreck 2. I did total cars. 2 cars, yes.
What is it? It's 4 years and 2 cars.
Yeah, Mary, just let's pass on that. Thank you.
So glossing over that, because part of your research was obviously traveling, there was obviously a lot of research required to get this book together, which must have been a challenge, especially once COVID hit.
Look, well, actually, I'd done all the work before COVID hit, which is great.
Right.
Yeah. So I had 2 years under the contract to write the book. Right?
Yeah.
Time was certainly a problem because I was working 4 days a week as well as doing all the research for the book for the first 18 months. So lots of late nights, no social life for weeks on end. And then I actually had to take time off from work, 5 months leave to write the book. But I did feel under the pump in terms of time frame, right? I had to ask for an extension as well. The other challenge, I guess, was that there wasn't a budget for the book. I didn't get paid any money until I'd
really.
Until I'd handed up the final copy. No.
There
so everything. There wasn't an advance.
Moment to remind everyone that this man has worked very hard for this book. So please go and purchase a copy today because he needs some royalties for his work out there. Researching for you and I to understand the politics of our food better. Share it with your friends. It's a Christmas gift.
So no budget. So I couldn't actually do that much travel. I had to pretend that I was going on holidays and get rec leave to go and do some traveling. So a lot of it was done basically, and thank heavens, via the internet, but also at the State Library in New South Wales. I couldn't get to any of the other libraries. The other big budgetary problem was, I don't know whether other food historians have come across this, but I actually had to also find my own images. And if you've ever tried to find archival images in Australia, I really feel for those institutions who have to charge people a mozza to get an image they hold, because they don't get enough funding, right, to do the kind of job. And I also had to end up, like, half the images in the book are my own, because there was no way I could get all the images.
Yeah, credit to you for the photography. You had a little box, right, that you set up.
Yeah.
So the photos of the lamingtons, I was like, that's Dad getting. So these are food in the wilds that is included in this book, right? You saw a lamington, you grabbed it, photographed it fresh. Chico roll, you split it lovingly and spilt its guts, and then
that and Sydney Park and Peter Shum walking around pictures. The other challenge in the book, and at this stage I want to acknowledge these people, was to be honest to the historians of Australian food who've gone before, right? And I know Case is about to put into the chat what I think are the kind of key texts that I use that are comprehensive histories. You know, Michael Simons, Barbara Sandage, Jackie Newling, John Newton, Jan O'Connell, Charmaine O'Brien, and I know I've missed one. But it was really important for me to acknowledge them, refer to them, but I had to also, and make sure that I touched all key historical points, but to tweak it for myself.
Yes, to make it that PVR magic. To make it also genuine to what your interest, you know, what your passion is.
Yeah. But also to do it enough that all those historians would not go, oh, bloody hell, Van Rackford, it's so wrong there, you know.
Tell me any historian that does that to you and I will fight them.
Okay.
Dan, now you talked about the challenges.
Yes. The fun bits?
The fun bits. What was the fun bits?
All right. I spent hours and hours on, God bless it, Trove, the National Library digitized archive, reading every single copy of the Women's Weekly from start to the end, right?
We actually had a Christmas lunch, remember, Dad? Where we
focused around it, exactly.
We did. We had a Christmas lunch where it was just from Women's Weekly recipes, Women's Weekly Christmas recipes.
And Yemeni's daughter, but not.
Oh, somebody's got their microphone on.
Never mind. What's fabulous about Trove, and it nearly got stopped, that Women's Weekly part of Trove, in a particular way, nearly got unfunded, right?
Wow.
Such a brilliant resource, you know. And what was fun about it was, in a real sense, coming to understand Australian women's role in creating our food. And now I know, you know, a lot of it, people go, "Ew, fuck that again." Oh, sorry, oops, yuck, that again. But look,
you can swear if you want to.
Okay. But if you look at those recipes, it's there where they start to actually integrate a lot of the food that they're hearing about, seeing neighbors provide. And it was just a delight to read them, right?
Yeah.
The other part I really enjoyed about it was, I figured I had to actually talk about Aussie icon foods. You know, Anzac cookies.
Yeah.
Granny Smith.
Yeah.
I did, you know, Jaffas and stuff like that. I also sneaked in the Chico roll.
Yes, please. I love the Chico roll story. That is fantastic.
And why I enjoyed that was because it was the only place where I could really have fun. You know, I could talk about those foods kind of lightly, kind of break up. Kind of,
but also we love those foods. I mean, who doesn't love talking about a Chico roll, like you were saying with Raj, with his kind of kebab thing. Like, there's something about a universal feel-good food item it's really fun to eat.
So I've noticed that my maid Abby has asked what goes into a Chico roll. A Chico roll should only have cabbage and carrot. It's basically a glorified Chinese spring roll.
Because I had this argument with my colleague and he said there has to be beef in there, but you're saying no.
No, you should not have beef in a Chico roll.
Oh.
Which is a fabulous point of difference in terms of Australian fast food.
Yeah.
Yep.
In terms of differences in, we are, like, it's vegetarian.
Oh, totally. Well, God knows what they fried it in, but it was great.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, we've got to keep moving on because we've got to get through 6 questions.
Yeah, we're halfway through. No, well, not quite.
Not that you'd know, because these are all spontaneous questions.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I haven't done any research.
So it was great to see how you developed the story of First Nations people and their food throughout the book. And it's obviously important to you to acknowledge their place in the land, and that there's a growing kind of passion, I think, emerging from the Australian population for Aboriginal cuisine. What future do you see? How far can this go? Do you see it? What's your hope?
All right. Yes, you're right. I was very conscious in the book, not just to talk about the foods that everybody characterizes as native food and what happened around, 65,000 years plus the early contact. I really wanted to know what happened to Aboriginal food over the period. So I talk about what happened around food rationing, about the change of the diet to flour and sugar, the impact of that, and the intergenerational impact of that.
Yeah.
But to go to the point about native food itself, I started during the process, but certainly afterwards, to really think what we have to do as white Australians is shift our perspective on native ingredients. They are not something out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
They are quintessentially Australian food.
Yeah.
They are a bedrock for Australian food. Yeah.
Love that.
And until we kind of say, hey, you know what? That's what we built from, or can keep building from, or can now rebuild from, we have a big problem. And it's our problem. It's not, and in a sense, it's also obviously the problem of Aboriginal Australians. That being said, one of the big things that I will say is, I wish Australians would recognize that when they eat fish and shellfish, they are eating Indigenous food. Okay, never defined as that early on. Native food is kangaroos and bushes. No, native food is all that stuff. And the more we recognize that we have been colonizers have been eating native food for all this time, the better.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true.
Yeah, and so that's the bedrock of it. The other part, I think, is that what I think has to happen is a decolonization, as I start talking about it, of the bush food industry. What I mean by that is this. When the bush food industry restarted in the 1980s, it was basically, and all credit to them, white orchardists and white chefs who started putting twigs and leaves and fruits on the menu, okay? All credit to them. And a couple of, certainly the early chefs tried to also involve Aboriginal apprentices in their workplace. We're talking about 1980s, okay? Which is when it kind of rise.
Yeah.
But the most recent, and this is terrible to think, is the most recent study of the bush food industry in 2019 by a bush food organization, not by a government organization, said that only 1% of what's earned in the bush food industry goes back to Aboriginal individuals or communities. And that's just, that is just so inequitable.
That is, absolutely.
It's just totally inequitable. And what I think is the only way we actually start looking to really bringing Indigenous foods back to where they ought to be is by changing that paradigm as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. Absolutely, Dad. I completely agree with you on that. And I also love that idea of, instead of, often Aboriginal people talking about being a box check at the end, we do it from the start. I think that really kind of embeds that idea, definitely. You're distracted, Dad. What are you clicking? You're at your book launch. Focus.
Yes, I got an issue that you muted me. Look, and I think we can all work to support the stuff that Aboriginal people in the bush food industry are doing, you know.
That's a really good plug, Dad. I mean, we've got in the group, we've got Deliveroo, which is a fantastic project, which we posted in the page, which is people from Wilcannia who are looking to source local foods for their people. If you go into the Facebook page, everyone, you can see there's a place there to donate to them. To be able to support their community with their own food, food from the country.
And look, I think we forget a couple of things. One, as consumers, we do have purchasing power. We know we've made difference to organic food, and we know we made a difference to animal cruelty, food that we insist does not impact on animals. We can do the same with native products. We can say we are not going to buy native food products unless we can go on to something like Supply Nation and see that they are 100% at best, at least 50 to 75% Indigenous owned, managed, that the Indigenous knowledge is protected. And when we go and eat at high-end restaurants where they put bush food on the table, we can ask, where are the Aboriginals in your organization? Do you have them as apprentices? Are they part of your managerial situation? Are they chefs? If not, why not? Why do you have their food on the menu without actually dealing with the structural problems around that?
I think that is a fantastic point, Dad. And everyone here tonight, you can take that lesson, hold people accountable, ask the questions.
Totally. We do it in other areas. We do it in other areas. If you want to do something around the Uluru Statement, start doing it by actually saying, no, I'm going to make these decisions about the Indigenous food that I interact with.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, question.
Sorry, my gin is nearly finished, but that's all right. Keep going.
I know my Negroni is almost finished as well. How's everyone going? You need to take a break. You can always take a break. Dad, you can always take a break. I can always take a break. Everyone, if you need to step away for a moment, don't worry. We're all on Zoom a lot. Take it easy.
Not too easy.
Question 4.
Yeah.
You write enthusiastically, Mum has put. So that's nice. About the different layers of cultures and cuisines in Australia. You and your family, and Mum, but Mum, were part of this layering. What was it like being part of a new wave of food culture growing up?
Sure. Look, the wave was a long time coming, okay?
Yeah.
When my Sri Lankan burger family comes, and Sri Lankan burgers are descendants of Dutch, Portuguese, French, and Sri Lankans and Tamils, right?
Yeah.
Sinhalese and Tamils.
Yeah.
When we came to Australia, the first thing that happened was an absolute upending of my traditional cultural food practice.
Yeah.
Where Sorry,
Dad. Sorry to start you full flight, but can you just tell people what your food practice was
in Sri Lanka? I'm about to.
Sorry, Dad. Sorry.
God, you can think what dinners at our household are like anyway.
You asked me to be the facilitator.
I did.
In front of everyone. I was requested to do this.
I did.
Go for it, Dad.
In Sri Lanka, burger food was definitely a full-on combination of morning. You kind of had a mix of Sri Lankan cuisine and European cuisine, mostly British.
String hoppers? Did you have string hoppers?
You'd have hoppers, not string hoppers, because that's later in the day. It takes long to make. Lunch is always curry and rice, and dinner is probably curry and rice, or you've got a British dish or a Portuguese dish or whatever, right? When I came to Australia, all this Sri Lankan stuff got tossed out, and I basically ate British food.
Yes.
Because that was the 1960s.
So when did you come to Australia? You came to Australia
62. Yeah.
62. And so you and Grandma and Grandpa and your siblings have come to Singleton.
So we first had a year in Sydney, and then we went to Singleton, 3 years up in the Upper Hunter, where we were the only, as far as I know, anyway, non-whites in the town. There were probably some Aboriginals, but they never were obvious or identified. So our experience, I guess, is like a general. My experience is, I think, pretty common, apart from the kind of reversal of the basic cultural food, to a number of migrants, right? What starts is you get the other migrants coming who are basically smuggling in seeds of the kind of vegetables you might want to grow, bringing in the kind of spices or herbs that you might want to use. What kind of vegetables
did your parents miss the most? Like
I don't want to disclose anything. but look, but back then
that was a hot button topic.
Back then, eggplant, aubergines did not grow anywhere. They were not in the market, right?
Right. You couldn't get an eggplant at all.
No. Things like things like ridge gourd, which you don't get anywhere. Bottle gourd. The basic thing like a curry leaf tree, you would never get. So, my father was, I think, one of the first people to actually ever in Australia grow in the middle of Singleton during frost winters, eggplants and these tropical vegetables. So, the early years of my life were Dad trying to find the only spice shops in Sydney, because we lived, 4 hours up the track, which I think was something like Moses Indian Spices. And depending on relatives, smuggling stuff in, which is what everybody did.
Did you know people that smuggled stuff in?
Totally, of course. Really? Every relative who came smuggled stuff in. They did. You could always bring in dried powdered stuff because it wasn't gonna, create a fuss quarantine-wise.
I'm not
going to dob anybody in, but certain cousins of mine right on this thing will hear. What happened though in terms of my cuisine then is when I hit university was also when Australia went through quite a radical lot of changes, kind of stimulated both by the hippies going up through the South Asia, South Asia into Europe, and also the Vietnam War, where there were a lot of Australians that got exposed to different cuisines, different Asian cuisines. There'd always been kind of a trend of Chinese cuisine happening, which had started to express itself in the 1960s. But in the middle 60s to early 70s, you suddenly get these Australians saying, well, where's my wok? Where's my fish sauce? Where's my Irish noodles? And so migrants who were already here start to put that out. Now, that's still not my food, but what it means is I suddenly have South Asian and Asian flavors, which is, again, I think what happens to other migrants. They might not find their own cuisine, but they find these other parallel cuisines where they can go and eat and at least get a bit of a sense of it.
Well, especially with our kind of burger cuisine, which is such a combination.
Sure, but it was.
Someone's done a shout out to Charmaine Solomon's cookbook in the the chat.
Look, I was going to say,
not a cousin of ours, but claimed as a cousin of ours.
But I was going to say, Charmaine writes in 1978 the fundamental Australian shift cookbook, her Asian cookbook. My mate John Newton basically says we all came back from being hippies, and we read Charmaine's book and we all went out and bought a wok. Mind you, Charmaine's a bloody Sri Lankan, but what she was doing with wok cooking knows. But look, to be honest, Margaret Fulton had already started introducing through Women's Day Asian food. Then what happens is, so you've got these, but you cannot get past what happened with the Vietnamese refugees into Australia, who just exploded the whole capacity for Australians to start eating differently. And subsequently, I think refugee and migrant groups, they had a difficult time establishing themselves. But what they did was they got to kind of a critical mass where they could have at least 3 or 4 restaurants in a major town where they could go and eat, and they could find the ingredients and bring them home and make them. And then you've got these Australians who are now getting curious about places they've been and want to taste these foods. And Jackie Newling says her dad drew brinjals in Adelaide. Yay, Jackie! You and my dad could have had a big talk. Yes, cherry ripe also absolutely needs mentioning. You're absolutely right, John. But I think my experience was like that till we get to the stage where migrants like me get asked recommendations by skips So what's the best place in Australia,
Yeah.
in Sydney, to go and get hoppers? And you think, God, amazing, you actually know what a hopper is.
Yeah.
Let me take you out to,
That's been
Toongabbie
mind-blowing
and Seven
for me.
Hills.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, we just don't recognize how bloody hard it was for migrants first to be here. And my book is full of the politics of migration. But then to actually kind of establish themselves enough to feel a part of whatever Australia was, and then to kind of find their space within a multicultural community, but more importantly, a multicultural table.
Yeah, and making those connections through food, as you say, like with the parallel.
And Ghassan Haj, who I love as a writer about multicultural, talks about everyday acts of multiculturalism.
Yeah, I love
the food that gets passed across the backyard fence. Oh, Joe, that's a really good smell you've got there. Spiro, what are you cooking? I'm cooking souvlaki. Well, what the fuck was that? Why don't you try this?
I'm going to try that from now on.
Yeah. And look, the history of, I'd love to finally do a history of looking through community cookbooks, the actual translation of multicultural food into the Australian home. Yeah, because I don't think necessarily it was by fine end dining.
Yeah, agree 100%. Okay, we've got two questions
Mary,
left.
I know. We're running out of time.
We're running out of time, so we're going to try. I'm going to try and keep
this next question I know, and it's really awful. Go on.
Okay, so everyone just, really relax into this question. It's going to be a really good vibe. It's going to be fun. Veganism and vegetarianism are on the rise. You say over 11% of adult Australians now identify as vegetarians on page 231. Thank you for the reference, Mum.
Yeah.
Can we move Aussies on from being a nation of meat eaters, and what initiatives would normalize the move away from this?
All right. I'm going to say one of the big problems is it is not just Aussies who are meat eaters. Okay. Now, I'm going to just hold this book up, and Casey's going to talk about my dear mate Alana Mann's book called Food in a Changing Climate. And I'm going to just read you very quickly. Okay. So, Alana's talking about framing the future of food. She says,
thank you,
why have I lost the damn thing? Anyway, what Alana talks about is the kind of 50-fold increase in meat eating across the world since 1980.
Since 1980, that recently?
Since 1980, exactly.
Wow.
What that's about is meat is a high status food.
Yeah.
Okay. We know from every study that's done of migrant communities, the minute they go into a country where, I love that little comment from John Eaton. We know that the minute they go to a country where meat is available, they shift what was primarily, and still is in most places in the world, a vegetable diet with a bit of meat. They shift to eating meat.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do to be high status within the society.
Yeah.
So the first thing that has to happen if you're going to shift meat is you've got to try and think, how do I make a soybean a high status thing? Right? And it's a difficult thing because we are so invested in meat as a high status thing. Yeah. High source of protein. Okay. Big problem. High source of wealth indication as well. That's partly what it's about. You're suddenly earning a lot of money, you eat meat.
Yeah.
Happens obviously within countries like India and stuff where the middle class start to eat more meat. Okay.
Charmaine O'Brien's just noted that in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Charmaine, it's this nexus that unless you can break it, really is a problem for kind of saying, hey, don't eat meat. And to be fair, also, countries like India and other places that have not been able to eat a lot of meat basically say, well, why are you telling us now not to eat meat? We finally can eat this stuff, and you're now saying, oh, it's bad. Okay, big problem. Second big problem, which again is what is treated in Alana's book, is industrial meat. Like currently the international globally integrated production of meat, which Australia is part of, is massively profiteering. Okay. And it's really, really hard, therefore, to set up a system like, hey, let's eat less meat, when your economies depend on meat being produced, right? Now, that's not to say that we don't have changes. Sorry, I know we're going really over time. Very quickly.
Do you need to get some water, Dad? You can take a break.
No. Very quickly. We are changing diets in Australia. Okay, we know we eat more fish. We know we've started to eat more vegetables.
Yeah.
Plant-based foods, as you know if you read Alana's book, there are problems about it. Okay, which are about the production of it in terms of the lab and things. But we really. I think it's an intractable problem. And I'm glad that we've got at least 11% of people saying vegan and vegetarian in Australia.
Yeah.
Love it if it was 25%. Would never think that it might be more than that.
Never. You don't think it's on the card in
I doubt it. Yeah. Not in my lifetime. There's too much invested in me.
Yeah. Well, and look, when you were talking about First Nations foods, and you're talking about seafood, and you're talking about that focus on plants, if we take that as our political action.
I would never have thought that Australians would give up the Christmas roast for seafood. That has been, to me, in my lifetime, one of the most extraordinary changes that Australian cultural food has gone through. Kangaroo meat, as somebody said, people might know, but kangaroo meat was initially eaten and then banned because meat producers said, stop putting this meat up for human consumption until the 1970s, and then later throughout the other states.
Okay, we're going to go to the last question. Someone was just worried with the Zoom ending because we said we were going to do it for an hour, but if we go a little bit over, it's not going to shut us down and boot us out.
Okay,
It'll be fine.
Go quickly. Quickly.
What is the question? Okay, the question is chapter 10. You know the question. No.
Yeah. All right.
This one, because I am a millennial. Let's just put that out there. In chapter 10, Millennial Reckonings provides a lot of warnings. And on page 256, to be exact, you say the picture is bleak in relation to farming practices. To finish up, can you leave us with some silver linings, ways forward, initiatives that will keep us all eating and drinking into the future?
Okay. Again, I wish I had Alana's book when I was writing this. But look, my initial ending for the book was way bleaker, right? I was writing when the fish kill was happening in the Darling, and I was really, really, really upset about it. And my editor said, Paul, you're kind of ending on a real downer. Oh, you want to tell us some good stuff?
Where's the happy ending?
Exactly.
Where's the happily ever after?
Exactly. So look, I could point to some things that were happening, okay? We know that unless we do some radical change to our agricultural practices and our land use practices, climate change is going to screw us totally, okay? And I don't just mean cows and animals farting, I just mean the whole process. So there are things, I mean, and God bless the hippies in organic farming way back then. Practices like regenerative farming, holistic farming, are ones that are trying to say, hey, let's actually try and work with the land in the way that we know First Nations work with, okay? Which also leads me to say stuff that people like Bruce Pascoe are doing and working with, various communities about trying to look at how we produce at scale food that's appropriate to our climatic conditions, despite the fact that we're about to globally warm. That's the future. Unfortunately, unless we get big shifts in government policy and industrial practice. And unless there's a profit to be made, you're not going to have the market built or the scalability built up and enough in the market to actually make these kind of ventures change substantially. Yes, Casey, by the way, Django's just arrived on the scene. Casey's been waiting to see if we can change her. Anyway, Mary, go for it. There are some questions I need to answer them in the last 10 minutes we've got.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, Dad, for answering my questions / Mum's questions. The dog is not vegetarian, correct? The dog
no, because he farted really badly when he was.
I did vegetarian.
Oh, someone's got their mic on.
We're talking about food.
There we go. Mute it. I'll mute it. Can I do that? Yes. Can I do that? Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
What I would say is...
Okay, I was trying to turn everyone's cameras on, but it just unmuted them all, so that was me.
So we're gonna turn everyone's cameras on for the Q&A, but we're gonna keep you guys on mute. So I'll just keep muting you as I see you. And we're gonna go to Casey, my cousin Casey, Paul's niece, who has been looking at the questions as they come in, and will be reading out some of them for Paul to answer on the fly without notes.
Okay, go on, Casey. Read me some questions and I'll answer them.
There's just one from Alexis. There was lots of comments and stuff, but there was just one question from Alexis, which was, this is such a broad topic. How did you originally pitch it to the publisher? Has the book changed from that original idea?
Look, the basic structure and themes of the book did not. I made it very clear to the publisher that I was going to do kind of this socio-political look at food. The book is part of a series called Food and Nations, and each book has been a very different take that the particular author has done. Like the Indian food book is a lot about Indian religious practice. Okay, the book about Italian food is What a Surprise About Pasta, and the French book is apparently, What a Surprise About Haute Cuisine. They accepted that what I wanted to do was this kind of look at food in the kind of context I wanted to do it. I never used the term, as far as I know, power in the book, right? In terms of what I'm talking about. But I really pitched to them to say, I think there are these, here I am sitting in 2018, 2019, pitching the book to you. And I'm worried. I am seriously worried about food in Australia. And what I see is that it's not about, hey, what will we grow? But it is about things like, how do we treat our migrant labor force? How do we treat people from Islamic communities? We're into Islamophobia and bloody halal certification and Pauline Hanson. What do we do about the fact that we're screwed in our diet? What do we do about the fact that Aboriginal people's mortality is tied to how screwed their diet became because of us? I can't talk about a history of food unless I talk about these issues. I don't want to do a book about, then we had Anzac biscuits, then we had the pavlova, and there's, questions about it. And I was really pleased that the publishers said, yep, go for it. What changed was that I wanted to try and do things like look at Christmases through the years, and that kind of just didn't work and wasn't kind of relevant anyway, but I pretty much stuck to what I had said to them and what they had said, yep, go for it. And look, I got to say, I was chuffed that when I sent up the material to them, the final draft, they didn't come back to me saying, hey, change the emphasis on that apart from the final paragraph. They basically said, well, pretty good. And look, can I give a shout out to John Newton, who's on this call? John was, maybe I shouldn't disclose it, but John was one of the people that Reaction gave the book to say, hey, has this guy got it right or not? And John was very generous about saying, hey, it's a book that's important. Ditto Barbara Sandage, who's quoted on the book, who I thoroughly respect as a food historian in Australia, who was very complimentary about the book and what I managed to achieve, and who got the book. But really, one of the people who really got the book was my the head of my publishing, who said, "Oh, I think we ought to call it True to the Land," and who put an Aboriginal image on the cover. Like that just blew me away. That just blew me away. You know.
Beautiful image.
Yep.
We've got another question in the chat, Casey.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw Helen Greenwood ask, what did you find in your research that totally surprised you?
Oh, coffee palaces, for example. All right. I know I kind of bang on about this, but I never knew that there was this thing called coffee palaces, which
I haven't heard of it.
Well, I'm going to tell you. It was part of the temperance movement in Australia in the late 1800s, where temperance movements, basically Christian movements who didn't like people to drink alcohol, meeting commerce and a land boom and a property boom in Victorian Australia, that sets up these huge hotels that are based on people not drinking alcohol or being served alcohol in the premises. Only last 10 years because they all realized, hey, there's no money in this. But I think it's a fascinating thing. The other thing, Helen, is I really got shocked by the history, as I said, of what happened to Aboriginal food over the period I looked at. I had not known what happened in terms of the controlling use of food on missions and stations. I had not recognized that in the 1920s and 30s, the whole missions movement originally, and reserves movement originally, was about Aboriginal people wanting to be self-sustaining food-wise. And they got screwed and the stuff got sold, you know. And what we have now is Aboriginal communities having diabetes and, heart disease and stuff that are diet induced because of what we did in terms of the shift to diet. And I was just so devastated and angry about that, you know. I guess the final thing, thanks, Helen, for asking the question, is exploring how policies that governments pursued. Look, when Australia was federated, we had two pieces of legislation that were incredibly racist.
Yeah.
The first was the Immigration Act, which was absolutely aimed at stopping Chinese immigration because they were taking our jobs.
Yeah.
And people don't know about it, but there was the Pacific Islander Labourers Act, which basically said to Pacific Islanders, who were the bottom line of our sugar industry, piss off, forcibly repatriated them. A lot of people kind of don't register because, federation's wonderful.
Yeah.
That at our birth, at the birth of this country, we really, and the entire Aboriginal voters, let's not even go there, but it was an ultimately racist act of federation.
Mary, there's a couple more questions if you want to.
I see Marilyn's got a hand up.
Marilyn's got a hand up as well.
Waiting patiently.
Sure,
I feel like she's due a question due to her contribution to the book writing process.
Yeah. Unrecognized.
Marilyn, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I can she unmute herself? She should be able to.
Okay. No, I put my hand up right at the start because
sorry.
There was something wrong and I couldn't. So just ignore it. I have no question.
Sorry, Marilyn.
Except
just a shout out to Marilyn and Meg.
Shout out to Marilyn.
That's while writing this book, I think.
And look, can I do a shout out to Marilyn and Django,
Where is
who kind of supported me through this entire process by putting up with me.
Very nice.
Well, Dad, we're moving towards. Oh, sorry, go, Casey.
No, did you want a couple more questions, or are we running?
Quick couple more.
Okay, quick couple more.
I love this.
Pop said,
no,
it was kind of where are we?
Go on.
Hit me.
Pop said, when are we going to compensate the workers who work on the land?
Oh, mate, look, look.
we have to start a new Zoom session to answer this question. We need another hour. Everyone, I hope you've got nothing on tonight because we're staying here.
Australian farmers have been screwed right from the start, and the National Party, I'm sorry, does not do much in terms of constructively looking at how you compensate them. Okay, we have had all this progress, like the solar settlement stuff after, World War I and also a bit after World War II. The initial part about the MIA, where governments kind of develop these great plans. Let's send people out to these rural areas and let's not give them any infrastructure. Let's just leave them to kind of make what they can. And of course they go bloody bust. Part of our history is about the absolute failure of government to properly fund the kind of things it wants to try and do. And in the climate change discussion, I do sympathize with an agricultural sector that says, hey, what's going to happen to us? And I do think that part of what happens to Australia in terms of moving to whatever target we're going to set is you've got to work out, what do you do in terms of not so much a compensation, but a way of transitioning those industries into, no carbon or whatever, or sustainable industries. And what's the period over which you do it, and how do you set up the kind of system? And I don't think that that's being looked at. And I absolutely understand why some rural people would be concerned. But I also really support the rural individuals in the community who are saying, we want to move towards a net zero situation. We actually get this. It's not going to work for us if we don't have, if the droughts and the floods are going to get so bad that we can't make a crop anyway. Sorry, tell us how to move now and support us.
David says, Paul, have you any thoughts as to the number of non-Anglo-Celtic workers in food processing? I suspect it is a big number.
Mate, it's huge. Because basically these are jobs that are, I hate to say this, but historically, white Australians don't want.
Yeah, you don't have to hate to say it. It's a fact.
They're low-paid jobs. It's casual. It's awful hours, right? That's why, for example, the Pacific Islanders were the backbone of the sugar industry. None of the Queenslanders who ended up complaining about them wanted to do the bloody work, right? We have orchardists and stuff now complaining about, we can't get workers from Australians. No, you don't, because you've been dependent on, in the first instance, Aboriginal seasonal workers, by the way, which is an area I want to look at. And then continually since then, people coming in on various migrant seasonal workers, working visas. And it's the kind of not so much hidden anymore, thank heavens, story of how our products get to market. We finally passed a Modern Slavery Act, right, last year. I am yet to see anybody take any case under that is about the slavery of these indentured workers. We keep thinking, we're not going to buy, clothing from Bangladesh. That's not the issue. Well, it is the issue. The fundamental issue for us is the slavery that we enact on our migrant labor force, our migrant seasonal labor force.
Do you think? I know. Let's do a book launch, baby. Go for it. Do you think it's something that's going to kind of come to a peak now that we've had COVID and we've got this immigration thing? Do you think that's going to escalate it as an issue?
No, because I am depressingly, I'll be depressing. Neoliberalism and capitalism accommodates so much, it just shifts to kind of greenwash, migrant wash, whatever, what the issues are, right?
Yeah.
We do have and Ken Davis is on here, I know would know. We do have changes happening in the kind of labor conditions, right? But we're working in an agricultural food producing capitalist system that basically says screw the workers.
Yeah.
And let's give them minimum concessions to actually help, address labor laws. But basically, we want to make a profit out of them, and we don't make a profit unless we screw them.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's truth. There we go.
He's note of the book launch. Are we ending on that?
Yeah,
we can't end on that.
He's such a depressor.
No, we're not ending on that because as a last action, what we're going to do, and I ran out of booze and Dad ran out of booze, but we're going to do cheers and a hooray for Gigi, for Daddy Paul.
Can I unmute everyone now? I can't.
Yeah, so we're just going to do a quick woo, and then I'll mute you guys and just give you the final wrap-up messages, but we're just going to do one last.
Oh, maybe I won't unmute everyone if you have to mute them again. No, they'll behave themselves. Just give them the wrap up.
Behave yourselves.
Unmuted.
Go for it. Don't abuse it. Unmute everyone, and we're going to do a big woo.
Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody.
Thank you everybody.
Now I don't feel so awful for muting everybody and turning their videos off. I'm so sorry.
Thank you everybody.
And can I just say thanks for everybody who put stuff in the chat, because that's been recorded, and I'm going to have a look at that and kind of think about it in the future.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Paul.
Thanks, everybody.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Yes. Great
I
hosting.
want to go on the page as a competition.
Great session.
Thank you, everybody.
I ruined your housekeeping, Mary. Sorry.
You just kind of staring at Dad.
Oh, sorry.
You guys still love them.
Sorry, I'm reading the chat.
We got everybody.
Amazing.
Hey, Dad, I'll call you back.
Amazing.
Bye, Dad. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
That was fun. We got to muck up.
Mary, did you have housekeeping? I'm so sorry. What was it? You were like,
What?
A final
No, I have no outro. I got no outro. The outro is
Lots of comments, Paul. Thanks, Paul. You're an absolute gem. Well, she doesn't know you that well, does she?
Hey, Alana. Bye.
Hey, fabulous effort.
you.
Oh my God. I love that. I love this entire dialogue between you two.
Oh,
Thank you
God.
very much. Thank you.
Beth,
I think it's the perfect book
wonderful.
launch, Dad. It's the
You and Bree have the same jumpers on. I'm sorry, Chloe. Chloe was like, why can't I turn my video on? I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was saying this to Paul, and I'm going,
It's so beautiful. Paul, it is so beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's so beautiful.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
She looks
Thanks to Mary and Casey for organizing it. Yeah.
I didn't Mary organized it.
Casey in the house on the radio, doing the clicks, doing the thing.
Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Chloe, I'm waiting to hear your bird song recording. I'm looking really forward to that. Oh, Claude, sorry, Claude, yes.
Well.
Hey, Robin Yogi. Hey, Brahman.
Oh my God, the video thing is
Oh, I'm so glad it's over though. Really.
Hey,
Bridie.
I remember people are still there. Is Bridie there?
Yeah, Bridie was there.
Bridie!
Yeah, Bridie. Hey, Diane.
It's Lloyd.
Baby Ann. All right, I just gotta go.
Am I on mute?
Hi.
Oh, you're not on
I got
mute.
in at the very end. Sorry, I missed most of
Right, he
it.
joined.
It's
I
been
missed most of
recorded.
it. I'm sorry. I only just saw the Facebook invite.
No.
It's all right, darling. It's been
This is the best-
recorded.
this
It's
is
been
the
recorded.
Great. I'll watch it again.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad. I let you finish.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad.
All right. Bye,
All right.
everybody. I'm going to sign off now. See you
don't
all.
see you. Call you, Dad. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I got to stop the recording. Oh God.
And then there were
Yeah,
four,
stop.
and then
Stop
I
the
don't know how to stop
recording.
the recording.
Press stop recording.
Okay. All right. I think I've got it.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, we'll find out. Oh, stop recording. I got it, guys.
All right.